Hello, everybody, and welcome to Week 4 in the National Football League as your Philadelphia Eagles set to do battle in their first NFC East matchup of the season with the Washington Commanders. I'm your host, LJ Harrell, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor, we're already in Week 4, man. It feels like the season just started, and we're already a quarter of the way through the season. I wish football would slow down, but here we are. And we're getting into the thick of things.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's wild how long it feels like we wait between the draft and like the preseason, and then the preseason disappoints us, and then we go right into the season, and it feels like the season just flies by for the amount of time we need to wait to get to this point. But yeah, I mean, this is exciting. I love divisional matchups, even though they probably shave about a year or two off of my life each year. They are the best matchups to watch in football. So I'm excited to get into this.
Yeah, definitely. Before we do go any further, as always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Greenhour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10, and follow me on Twitter at LJHarrell54. And then follow Edge of Philly Sports on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at Edge of Philly Sports. All right, as I mentioned, that the Eagles are having their first divisional matchup. Oh, also, if you are live, if you're joining us live, please let us know your thoughts on the Eagles Commanders game in the chat. Let us know what your prediction, the players to watch, keys to the game and whatnot. What's up, Daniel Barry? How you doing? Thank you for joining us. All right, Connor. So as I mentioned, it's the first divisional matchup for the Eagles. And this is a revenge game of sorts for the Eagles because the Commanders gave the Eagles their first loss of the season last year. They dominated that game on the ground. The Eagles had around less than 20 minutes of time of possession. But this is a different Commanders team, different quarterback. They have Sam Howell. It's also a different offensive coordinator. They got Eric Bieniemy. So it's a different offense that they're facing, and we know Bieniemy's style offense has success against the Eagles because he was the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs last year. What are your initial thoughts in this game between the Eagles and Commanders?
I mean, we're going in relatively healthy, so we got a fairly solid position as far as health goes. A lot of banged up players, but fairly healthy otherwise. But I mean, the Commanders always feel like I always feel like we pick on the Commanders and the Giants, and for good reason. But I absolutely agree that they look different. The offense looks a bit better, but the defense kind of looks like it's taken a bit of a step back. They're giving up a lot of yardage, a ton of rushing yards. That defensive line still doesn't seem to be clicking like we kind of expected, especially for the amount of money that they put into the defensive line. So, I mean, my initial feeling and thoughts is like really good. Like I feel confident heading into this game, but because it's a divisional game, I always worry about those games, and the rivalry atmosphere always brings more heat between these teams and makes the games a lot closer than sometimes they feel like they should be. But they are looking like a different team, but in one respect, they step forward on the offensive side, and they've kind of taken a step back on defense, which I always felt defense was their strongest suit. So it'll be interesting to see what they do against the Philadelphia Eagles in this matchup, because they've only really played their truly toughest matchup was the Bills. They played the Cardinals and the Broncos otherwise. So this is really going to be a true test. They got spanked by the Bills. So now they come in to Philly and they have to play the Eagles, and I would put the Eagles on par with the Bills. So it could go either way. It's the divisional aspect that shifts the pendulum.
Yeah, Washington is 2-1, and as you mentioned, they won their first 2 games before getting blown out by Buffalo. I mean, a lot of people thought that they would lose to Buffalo. Buffalo is one of the top tier teams in not only the AFC, but the NFL. Coming in, I always feel like it's a divisional matchup. Divisional matchups primarily usually go, they're usually tight matchups. It usually it's not an easy game, and especially being that it's the first one. And again, like it's a different Washington offense a little bit. Again, Sam Howell, who I'm not a big fan of, When he came out of the draft, I thought he was a tad bit overrated. But they have weapons on the offensive side of the football. Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel, Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson. Their offensive line is a little banged up. That's where I think the Eagles should be able to expose them. They've given up, I think, 19 sacks in 3 games. That's crazy. Like the Eagles, while they haven't, the sack numbers aren't there like they were last year. They had 70 sacks. We don't anticipate them having 70 sacks again this year. But like the sacks have primarily come from the middle, the interior. We need to get Hassan Reddick going. Hassan Reddick now has the cast off. That could be big. He could finally probably start feeling normal. So we'll see what happens on the defensive side of the football for the Eagles. But I'm excited to just see them fly around. Sean Desai has, I think he's gotten comfortable with what he has, and he's starting to kind of get a good flow of game planning and of calls in the middle of games.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, he actually, Hassan Reddick actually spoke to that this week during some of the media time, saying that he does feel he can let loose and he felt a lot better at practice without that cast on. So while he says he doesn't want to make excuses, that can throw your game off. It's just like a player coming back from a torn ACL and not looking themselves for 3 or 4 games. Like when Dak Prescott, I hate to use that example, but when Dak Prescott came back from having his leg shattered, essentially, he didn't look himself running the football or being mobile like he used to be. Different positions, different circumstances, but the whole point is just that you feel different when you're coming back or when you're put in a scenario where you're not comfortable with the circumstance. And this was the cast, and you talked about it, I think, on the last show, LJ, where you mentioned he just doesn't seem right. It seems like the cast is affecting him and he's not able to really let loose. And then this week he spoke to that, and it's great to see that the cast is off, because this defense has been looking really good, but obviously we expect some players to. Josh Sweat's been incredible. Fletcher Cox has been incredible. And those are 2 guys who I expect to have on and off weeks. Jalen Carter I expect to do incredibly well almost every week, but he's going to have off weeks too. Mm-hmm. So you have to be prepared to have a guy have the full force of your line, somebody else be able to step up in that circumstance. And luckily, we haven't needed anyone to step up, but it would be really nice to be able to see Hassan Reddick really take that step forward. But yeah, that offensive line in Washington is definitely not the greatest, giving up 31 pressures, but the sack, which is middle of the pack, but 10 sacks is very high up in as far as their top 5 for sacks allowed. So when they do give up pressure, they generally tend to give it up in the form of a sack or a quarterback hit, versus just making uncomfortable.
One thing I do want to say about Reddick, he also mentioned how they're chipping him. They'll have a running back or tight end hit him just so that he doesn't get that, because he is a good get off. Like we talk about how Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata's get off as tackles is really good. He is a good get off for a defensive end. He's able to time it, so that does affect when you're getting hit. Like you go full force, then you get hit, you stumble, and then you have to reinsert yourself and go forth again. So that does change things, and hopefully he starts to get back to rhythm. We don't want him off the field, obviously, and we know how big of a season he had last year, and the anticipation was that he wouldn't have maybe like the 16 or however many 18 sacks that he had last year, but he would have another big year. So, but he's starting to tad bit slow. The defense, while in principle it's the same, it's a different defense that Sean Desai is doing than Jonathan Gannon did. Maybe it doesn't feature the ends as much as it did for Gannon, but we see how the interior of the Eagles defense is eaten. So, if they continue to have to double team, Jalen Carter or even Jordan Davis, that's going to open things up for Josh Sweat and for Hassan Reddick. So I think they'll get it going. And this could be a big week. I don't anticipate them getting that 9 sack performance that they had against Carson Wentz in Washington last year, but I do anticipate them, getting after Sam Howell. But the one thing that opposing quarterbacks have done against the Eagles is get rid of the ball quick. But Sam Howell hasn't done that yet this year. So hopefully he doesn't start to do that this week, because obviously a lot of quarterbacks, when they go up against the Eagles, that's what they tend to do. They tend to get rid of the football because they don't want the defensive line to wreak havoc and get after the quarterback and cause a play. But if they can force a quick pass because of the rushing, the front four of the Eagles getting to Sam Howell, Darius Slay, James Bradbury, Reed Blankenship, like they should be able to get some turnovers on the back end, and that'll give the short field to the Eagles offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've nailed some really good points there, especially for what the defense can take advantage of. And Sam Howell, he hasn't really impressed like these teams who took these like Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell. They really haven't impressed or been the type of quarterback that they this bargain quarterback that they thought might be able to keep the team afloat for a couple seasons, and they don't have to invest at that position. But I mean, the Falcons are actually looking kind of, I hate to go off topic, but the Falcons are actually kind of looking good. And that's with Desmond Ridder there. Like if you could get like a real quarterback in the room, they'd probably look a lot better. And look how
and they're not even utilizing Kyle Pitts. Who, and I know that because I have him on fantasy.
Criminal how he's being used. And then Sam Howell, back to that, is like, it's if you had a good, like you see what Sam Howell's doing with this offense, which is, I mean, they ranked 25th in passing yards, 15th in rushing yards. I mean, the rushing yards, okay, they're middle of the pack. Passing yards, they could be middle of the pack or better with a half-decent quarterback in the room. And Sam Howell is not a half-decent quarterback or a quarterback you want in the room leading your squad. So, I mean, it's kind of a blessing in disguise having a guy like getting to play against a guy like Sam Howell and continuing to get this run of games where we can take advantage and really get a good fast start off to the season before we hit that middle gauntlet of 5 or 6 games where we can easily be coming 500 or just below 500 when we're done that stretch. So taking advantage of these matchups, especially from a quarterback perspective, is really important because like you said, they have a ton of great weapons, but with almost any other quarterback, these weapons would look so much. But their leading receiver is Curtis Samuel with only 127 receiving yards. And that is through 3 weeks of football. Like that is not a lot of receiving yards at all. So we talk about the weapons and we concern ourselves with the weaponry, but the quarterback's just not. He's spreading the ball around obviously pretty well. He's got 671 passing yards, so he's spreading the ball around fairly well. But to that same point, there is no established guy who we really have to worry about. So I think it's going to be a really good game for the cornerbacks, a really good game for James Bradbury to get more comfortable in the slot as well, and hopefully
Terry McLaurin does have good numbers against the Eagles. So we'll see. He's been able to really do some damage all over the field against the Eagles, and that's including Darius Slay. So we'll see.
And hopefully Job can get more comfortable on the outside too. Like you hope that these guys can get more comfortable in matchups like these and get starting to feel more confident because Job did not look all that great last week. So, and clearly he's the guy that the Eagles are going to give lots of opportunities to take that other outside job. They seem to really like him. It seems like, at least from the outside looking in, that they don't find Rick's ready, and Rick's had the better preseason than Ringo, which means they obviously don't see Ringo as being anywhere near ready to step into that role yet either. So they're going to give Job a lot of opportunities. So it'd be nice to see him have a game like this where his confidence can be boosted.
Yeah. So that, again, matchups are key. And obviously being the first divisional matchup, that it's just going to enhance things. The first 1:00 game for the Eagles, they got that's their first of 3 this year. The other one is Washington, and I think the Arizona Cardinals. Before week 17 or for week 18 against the Giants, they don't have that time out yet. But like, I'm glad we get an early game. I like the early games. I know that there's always that discussion. Do you like the Eagles playing early, the 4:00 slate, the Monday night, Sunday night, Thursday night game? I like 1:00 games because then I'm stressed for the 1:00 games and the 4:00 games if the Eagles are later, or if they're 8:00, I'm stressed all day thinking about the Eagles. But now I can just watch the Eagles at 1:00, and then depending on how that goes, will be dependent upon the mood that I'm in the rest of the day. But yeah, like sticking with the Eagles defense, a couple big injuries. Sidney Brown's going to be out. Justin Evans potentially could be out. That's 2 safeties out. That leaves Reed Blankenship and Terrell Edmonds, and they brought up Tristan McCollum. I think that's his first name, right, Tristan?
Yep.
So that'll be interesting. If Evans can't play, and if something were to happen to either Reed or Terrell Edmonds. I don't know if you want to throw McCollum in there. We don't have, and it's not like we have Avonte Maddox who we can throw back at safety. So that has the potential to change a lot of things up for the Eagles defense. But yeah, I mean, and then Zach Cunningham has been really good. Nick Morrow, who had the safety last year, has been really good. When Nakobe Dean got hurt, the big question was, how are they going to hold up at the linebacker position? I think they've held up a lot better than I thought they were going to, and those two are obviously very key to that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I hope that the linebackers can continue to stand their ground. They've looked good. Cunningham's been impressive. Morrow looked really good in his opportunity that he was given. He's really making a run to stay on the team when Nakobe Dean comes back and he's healthy. So hopefully, I mean, when you have a front four creating pressure and wreaking havoc like that, it can make your job a lot easier as a linebacker. So hopefully they can continue to impress and continue to do that well. Otherwise, I feel like when I look across the board at the Commanders' offense and then I look at our defense, I feel really comfortable. Like the safeties were missing. I'm not all that concerned with Sidney Brown. He had a really nice, not really nice because he was kind of falling over and everything, but he had the pass breakup when he was given the opportunity to finally come out after Justin Evans left the game. But I'm not really concerned because the safety room was already a concern of ours. So as long as Reed is in there, who is the safety we were most comfortable with and most confident in, whoever plugs and plays cannot be any worse than some of the other players that are plugging and playing and the damage that they're doing on the defensive side of the ball. So we definitely need help. We got Luffy in here saying we need the most help at safety. Backers are really solid. Definitely the backers are looking really solid, and safety room has been something that I think Howie hears loud and clear and just couldn't care less to address. I think it's probably, based on what I'm seeing, it is probably the second lowest on the totem pole in positions he cares about, because punter he clearly cares very little about. He's clearly
going to recycle punters all year.
Exactly. They worked out a punter this week with Braden Mann's about to go into his second game. So he's clearly preparing to do the same thing and just do the 4 call-ups, release. Get a new guy in the practice squad, 3 call-ups. So 3 call-ups, release, and then 3 call-ups, release. He's just going to keep playing this game with the practice squad.
I don't know if you know the answer to this, but now they did it twice with Siposs, but like, could they say man goes through 3, they cut him, they do another? Can they bring man back to the practice squad to do the same 3, or is it like, because I have a feeling that's what Howie could, but then again, I feel like somebody would eventually probably sign Braden Mann if he's good enough. But Luffy says a package of Barnett, Quez, and Kenny for Budda Baker would not work. They would not do that.
I am on board with packaging Barnett out the door, but they are way too high on Quez Watkins and Kenny Gainwell in Philadelphia. But maybe not fans, but the team is way too high on Quez and Kenny to ever even contemplate putting them in a deal. So the thought is there. I would package Barnett 100%, but at the end of the day, we've actually talked about Budda Baker and the thought of doing business with the Arizona Cardinals and Jonathan Gannon, and we just think for pure spite, he's just not going to deal with us no matter what. Even if the deal made the most sense to do, he's not going to do it because this is a spite thing.
Oh yeah, definitely not. But like if there was a way, that's why I brought up Jeremy Chin. I don't think he's a starter with Carolina. So like if you can go out there and get him, I know he's not the greatest safety, but he's better than what we have, except potentially Reed Blankenship, which doesn't say much for Reed. But yeah, so like it'll be interesting to see what happens with this Eagles defense, and if they can continue to. They had obviously their best defensive effort was on Monday night against Tampa, so they have to continue. They have to continue that. They have to just continue to. What do they say? 1% better every day. Get 1% better. 1%. Keep getting better. They're not trying to win the Super Bowl tomorrow. They're just trying to go 1-0 this week to give them the best shot at winning the division and potentially getting the number 1 seed. The number 1 seed is going to be key. Obviously, San Francisco is going to be there. Detroit's going to be there. Dallas will probably be there. Like, it's not going to be easy for the Eagles. They're not going to be able to go in the week, 13, 14, having the division or the top seed sewn up so that they can kind of play games and be healthy going into the playoffs. They're going to have to go through all 18 weeks to fight for that number one seed. And I mean, I always say, or it's always said, like, if you have the number one seed, because it's not like in the past when the top two seeds got a bye. Now only the first seed gets a bye. That's key. But I feel like the Eagles are the type of team that they can go on the road and win a playoff game. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, going forward, but we want to focus on this game. And as Luffy said, Jeremy Chin would be amazing, and he can play slot. Yep, he can play slot. He can play safety. He would fill a need for this Eagles defense. So we'll see what happens. I don't know necessarily when the trade deadline is. Is that the end of this month?
I feel like we're still a few weeks away. Yeah, I feel like it's mid just prior to mid-season. And I mean, as long as we're winning at this point, I don't know if Howie's going to find a big enough weakness to say, I need to go and deal assets to get a safety in the building. I'm just not prepared to believe with the way this defense is playing that he's going to sit there and say, yeah, I need to address safety ASAP. He looks more at like the lines first and then the weapons on offense after that. And so safety is going to be so far close to the bottom of the list. I would be shocked. Like, some team would have to make a safety available and be very unhappy with that safety and how we come in and be giving up, some sort of cheap day 3 type pick, because it's just not the Howie nature to put a lot of assets into linebacker and safety. And I don't expect that to change this year.
Yeah. All right. So let's move over to the offensive side of the football for the Eagles. Jalen Hurts. We haven't seen him be the type of passer that he was last year, not yet. But the one thing he does, I think I'll say this every week. What does he say? The main thing is the main thing, and the main thing is to win games. So he's a winner. They're 20-1 in his last 21 starts, regular season starts. So like, he's getting the job done. It doesn't matter. He doesn't care about stats. He doesn't care about accolades. All he wants to do is go out there, win games, and win a Super Bowl. That's the only accolade that he worries about. He got AJ Brown involved early and often last week. Had a big game. Obviously, DeAndre Swift has had in two games. He's second in the league in rushing. So like, if they can keep him going and keep him healthy, I don't have an issue with him not playing in the fourth quarter. They were up 2 scores last week, against Tampa. I do want to see Rashad Penny though. Like, I'm really of the thought that if they knew they were getting DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny wouldn't be on this team right now. I don't know. It wouldn't shock me if he asked for a release or something. I don't know if they would do that. Obviously, they want to keep a body around just in case of injuries, but I would have liked to see Rashad Penny get some carries last week over, Kenny Gainwell in the fourth quarter. You have to see what you have with him, because if he has to get thrown in there, we don't know. He'll just be going in there fresh, and I don't know if that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, you want to see what you got, and you want to create some sort of value in case he demands this, because we know Howie's not really the type to release guys mid-season. He doesn't generally seem to pull that type of trick. He generally leans on the practice squad guys and bringing guys in that way and getting guys out that way. So he's not really the guy I don't think he'd be the guy to go and release Rashad Penny. But to that point, then you need to create some sort of value in the chances that you get. I get that you love Kenny Gainwell, but it's clear you need to keep Swift and Gainwell fresh. So in the fourth quarter of a game that you're completely dominating, why not give nearly 100% of the snaps to Rashad Penny, see what you got, try and build a bit of value so that when the time comes, when the trade deadline comes, hell, maybe he can be somebody that you send away with a day 3 pick to get a safety and fix that position a little bit. Because damn well that they like Boston Scott, they love Kenny Gainwell, and DeAndre Swift has given them no reason not to absolutely adore the guy. So they have 3 guys who they're always going to play over Rashad Penny. And once Boston Scott's back, Boston Scott's going to poach whatever Penny work there is from Penny. And we already know that Boston Scott's staying an Eagle, Kenny Gainwell's staying an Eagle, and DeAndre Swift is staying an Eagle. So I agree with you. I would have liked in that position in the fourth quarter to see what we got. And I mean, if you were completely stagnant and getting a yard or less on every single rush, okay, get away from that because you want to run the clock down. But if he's exactly, he still did. So like at worst, like at least try and provide some sort of opportunity to give him a chance and build some value and get rid of him that way, because Howie's not. I just don't see Howie releasing Rashad Penny. He just doesn't do that stuff. And he likes to keep obviously we know with DeAndre Swift's history with injuries, Boston Scott struggling with some injuries here and there, probably based more around his size. You want to have that extra depth in the room at running back. And I don't think, I'm going to go check the practice squad right now. I don't think they have another running back on Ross. Oh, they have Brian Koback on the practice squad. That's it. So obviously Rashad Penny's way better than Brian Koback. So you're going to keep a guy on roster who can make you feel comfortable that if someone goes down, this guy can step in. Although if you're not comfortable enough to, I know. If you're not, I never heard of him either. But if you're not comfortable enough to put Penny in the fourth quarter of a game that you're dominating, I don't know.
I don't know when. Yeah, who knows when he's going to play? Unless they're trying to save him too. For I don't know. I have no idea.
There's no way you're saving Rashad. We're in week 4 now. Like you just said when we started the episode, we're starting to get into the thick of things with the NFL season. And if you don't trust Rashad, first of all, he was a healthy scratch one game. That already told me more than enough. And then the fact that you can't even put him in a blowout game and you feel the need to still lean on Kenny Gainwell, I don't know. There's something up there, but I mean, at least get some value so that we can trade him.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with the running back position. I think the biggest matchup is the Eagles' offensive line against that front four for Washington, all first rounders. Chase Young coming back from injury, Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen, two of the better tandems. One of the better tandems in the league in the middle, and then Montez Sweat. That's going to be the biggest factor. The Eagles' front four or front five, offensive linemen are going to have to protect Jalen Hurts and not allow them to get pressure with 4 guys. Because if they can get pressure with 4 guys, they can drop 7, and then it's going to be tougher to get the ball to Brown, Smith, Goddard, and whatnot. And run the football. If they can find a way to stop those 4 guys, you have a better chance of moving the ball offensively. I don't know how I feel right now. How I feel the Eagles are going to move the ball. I don't know if they're going to easily move the ball. I don't know if they're going to easily put up points. That's something that's still going through my mind right now. What are your thoughts on that front four for the Washington Commanders?
I mean, yeah, the front four is their bread and butter. It's where they continue to put money and invest money, even though they're not invested in Chase Young. They've invested a ton of money in Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne. And clearly Montez Sweat's going to be in line next. They clearly lean on him. Montez Sweat's having the better season of all of them right now. So it does worry me about what we could be looking at when we have that matchup. I trust this offensive line. They looked super good last week, but obviously the matchup was really different. You didn't have a front four as dominant as this front four. From a passing perspective, the Washington Commanders aren't giving up a ton of passing yards, but they are giving up a fair amount of rushing yards. They're giving up 128.7 rushing yards per game. So there's clearly something there. And that's where I think that you can kind of lean on. We can have more of a balanced approach to the game, where if the rushing game starts to slow down, you can go to the passing game. Of course, like we said, Joshua Dobbs was one of the games they played that the Washington Commanders played in, and Russell Wilson, who that offense has been struggling as well. So, I mean, it's tough to get passing yards going with struggling offenses. As we're seeing for at least Jalen Hurts, the rushing attack's working well, but the passing attack not always. So I feel like that's a spot you can attack, is the fact that they're giving up a lot on the ground, and it doesn't seem like that front four is being overly effective when it comes to being run defenders like, say, Jordan Davis, who's an absolute monster against the run. These guys don't seem to be looking as effective against the run so far this season.
Is Jalen Carter the best player on the Eagles defense at 3 games into his career?
I would say yes. At this point, listen, you can't knock the other guys that much. I get it. There's like James Bradbury, Hassan Reddick just hasn't looked himself, and obviously it looks like we may know why. But Jalen Carter, it's the fact that he's played like 48% of snaps or something. Like he's playing such a minimal amount of snaps. If you bump that number up 10 or 20% and that production sustains, he would be out producing all defensive tackles by a landslide. He would be on defensive edge type numbers week in and week out as a defensive tackle, which is crazy to think about. So obviously when you think about it that way, it's unlikely if you give him 10 or 20% more snaps that would sustain to that extent. But even if he sustained to the extent he is now, he'd still be probably a top 3 defensive tackle in the NFL. And I don't think that's crazy to say. You call us box score watchers if you want, but turn on the tape. All you got to do is turn on the tape. It has nothing to do with box score watching. The box score numbers are there. His pressure numbers are there. And he's an absolute animal.
Hold up. Okay. What's up, Anthony? Thanks for joining us. Burgundy and gold for life. So I'm guessing a Washington fan. Carter is out of shape. If the way Carter's playing now is out of shape, wait till he's in shape. It's ridiculous. He's playing amazing.
Maybe he's mistaken him for Jordan Davis, because Jordan Davis was out of shape and getting in better shape. Yeah, exactly. He's getting there. But I mean, hell, if Jalen Carter's out of shape and he's just using purely technique to dominate the competition, that's super impressive. He says he's overweight.
That you're talking about Jordan Davis. You're definitely not talking about Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter's not overweight.
No, not for a defensive tackle. Let's see, Jalen Carter. I gotta look up his weight now. I gotta figure this out.
Not all defensive tackles are gonna look like Aaron Donald. Let's be real. Like Aaron Donald, it's ridiculous the way he looks.
Oh yeah, you're never gonna have a lot of players. He's 314 pounds, so I mean he's a big boy, but he definitely moves extremely well.
Not who's 314?
Jalen Carter. He's saying hear me out to play a 17-game season.
But we're not asking Jalen Carter to play 85% of the snaps. All he has to do is play. So playing defensive line compared to playing offensive line is totally like offensive linemen have to play 100% of the snaps most of the time. Like it's more imperative for them to be in shape. Defensive linemen, you're rotating in and out, in and out, in and out. You have different body types for defensive linemen. You have the run stoppers like Jordan Davis. You have the guys that get off the edge like Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick. You have those in between guys like Jalen Carter who can stop the run and also get after the quarterback in the middle. Like there's all different type of body types for defensive linemen. JJ Watt, you're not going to have the JJ Watt, Aaron Donald, TJ Watt, Micah Parsons be skinny as a defensive lineman. He's for the position he plays. He is not out of shape. He is in shape.
And I'm just going to point this out. Daron Payne is 320 pounds.
Yeah.
So is this man, are you burgundy and gold for life, going to tell me that you find Daron Payne, the man that you just paid as at the time the highest paid defensive tackle in the league? Now I think he's been surpassed since. But you're going to tell me that Daron Payne is overweight as well? Because you can't look at 314 and then look at 320 and say, oh, but wait, there's something different about Daron Payne.
Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen, like they're in. I'm sorry. Of course it does, but that's what they use the first 3 weeks of the season for, like, and camp. But like a lot of guys don't play in preseason. It used to be that. He's in shape. He's good. He's fine. We're not worried about Jalen Carter. Anthony says Hurts is starting to be his old self and keying on one person, and that's A.J. Brown. Hurts has other weapons to throw to. That's open on every play to throw to them, but he holds on the ball too long and he's forcing the play. I do think he is holding on the ball a little too long. He's kind of reverting back to 2021. I don't know if he's not seeing the field well or if he's just not comfortable. And I think that the coaching staff obviously told him to get down. Like they don't want him running as much. He doesn't look the same in the pocket. Like that touchdown pass, that drive that he threw the touchdown pass to Zacchaeus. he had the two plays in that drive that he went to Zacchaeus. He held the ball in the pocket for like 5.5 seconds. I think if it was last year Hurts or definitely 2021 Hurts, he's running. So he is trying to make it a point to not get out the pocket quickly. But I also like we're not seeing the Jalen Hurts we saw last year because I think they took that one aspect away, potentially took that one aspect away from him where he was able to make plays with his legs.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully they're not telling him like to become more of a pocket passer or to be like more often than not a pocket passer versus rushing, because he is still a very effective rusher. Last week he was not because obviously the flu-like symptoms apparently were there and prevalent in the game, but generally he's better at that, and that's what also opens up the run game, the passing game, and a whole lot of other aspects. So if you're running the ball, if your quarterback's running the ball 25% less, 30% less, that for most people, for most quarterback schemes, that may not be a huge difference, but for Jalen Hurts and for this offense, that's a huge difference, and that's a game-changing difference in my opinion. I do think he is holding the ball a bit too long, but I do like that he's standing in the pocket. He's making throws. He's taking some hits even after making throws as well. So, I mean, it is impressive to see his pocket awareness, his pocket presence, and what he's been able to do. But obviously, it shows through the first 3 weeks that to that same point, there needs to be some adjustments made in the offense. It may include getting Jalen Hurts' legs a bit more involved again. It's not as bad as a Justin Fields situation in Chicago, but you don't want to get to those situations where you're completely taken away or taking a significant amount away from a very key aspect of a person's game.
Yeah, I am kind of jump over to the Washington defense. I am looking forward to the matchup. Kendall Fuller, Benjamin St-Juste, Emmanuel Forbes against Brown, Smith, and Zacchaeus. Even if I think Watkins is back, he should not take the third wide receiver reps from Zacchaeus.
Watkins is out, by the way.
He's not playing this week. Then we don't have to worry about that. Zacchaeus, I think, has definitely supplanted himself, or should he's cemented himself to being the number 3 receiver on this team. So I am interested. I know that Forbes, when he got drafted by Washington, they asked him, what matchup he is looking forward to most, and he said Devontae Smith, because Devontae put like 200 yards on him when he was at Mississippi State. So I'm very intrigued in that matchup. Forbes isn't the biggest guy, but he does got speed, so great matchup if he's going to be lined up against Devontae Smith. I don't know if Kendall Fuller can run with or go stride for stride with AJ Brown, but again, it's going to be a good matchup. And if the Eagles offensive line can protect Hurts, whatever blitzes Jack Del Rio decides to design or that front four, keep them from getting pressure, I think they should be able to throw the ball down the field. And I know that's kind of what Eagles fans want to see. They want to see the Eagles get the passing game going. So that's going to be a big key. I think early on we'll see the Eagles throwing the ball before, if they're not able to, then they'll go, to the bread and butter of the run game.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely going to be some good matchups. I mean, but by namesake, a lot of people know this cornerback room, or is getting to know this cornerback room in Washington. Kendall Fuller is actually having a really good season. He's only allowed 5 receptions on 12 targets for 26 yards, so he's having a super good season. Benjamin St-Juste, mixed. He's 11 for 13, 107, but it's the Emmanuel Forbes matchup that'll be interesting, like you said, because he has allowed 9 receptions on 12 targets for 159 yards. And it's clear teams are attacking him because his snaps per target is 5.9. His snaps per reception allowed is 7.9. So he is getting targeted a lot, and he is allowing a lot of receptions. And 17.7 yards per reception allowed is a massive number. So it'll be interesting to see who Emmanuel Forbes does get matched up with, because on paper, Emmanuel Forbes is a right cornerback, so he would match up with Devontae Smith. So
I think it will be Devontae.
I think it'll be Devontae too. And I mean, Emmanuel Forbes, I mean, I liked him through the draft process. I think he's a really aggressive cornerback and stuff, but the size was a major factor in a lot of teams pushing him down their draft boards. And I mean, it'll be interesting to see because Devontae Smith had the same treatment during the draft process as well. But it's clearly showing in the early going that Emmanuel Forbes is the cornerback to target of these guys and is the one who is struggling the most. It's not like he's handling this with grace. He's struggling to handle the situation of being targeted the most, and teams are making it a point to target him the most. So hopefully it's not just purely an A.J. Brown game, because it looks like if the matchup stands, it should be a Devontae game.
And I don't, and again, Dallas Goedert should have a big game. I don't know. I don't think the linebackers or even the safeties could cover or run with Dallas Goedert. A bend but don't break defense. What happened to last week when the Bills put up 37? I think one was a pick 6, but we'll see. Who did you say their first 2 games were against, Connor? Again, it was Arizona and
Denver.
And Denver, yeah, 2 bad teams. They go.
But I do agree with this. Burgundy and Gold for life. We do agree on this point. Emmanuel Forbes was such a good prospect because he was it reminds me of an undersized Rasul Douglas. Rasul Douglas was best when getting his hands on the wide receiver within the first 5 yards and taking advantage of that. That was Emmanuel Forbes' bread and butter when he was playing in college. But because the scheme forces him to play zone more often than not versus playing man, he may be struggling to make this adjustment. And it may not be an adjustment that he will be able to make because he needs to be able to work in the early going to throw a wide receiver off their game. So we probably will agree on this 1 point tonight, Burgundy and Gold for life, but we probably won't agree on many more. So,
So look, the Eagles we know that the Eagles have weapons. Rasul Douglas is, if anybody listened to us when Rasul Douglas was an Eagle, knows I wasn't a big fan of his. Maybe it was because of the defense that Schwartz had him playing. We think he's, again, like Connor said, he's more physical, wants to play up. He hasn't. Well, again, that entire Packers defense really hasn't been playing well. And with Jair Alexander out, it forces him to play like a more prominent role as a corner for them. But that's a different story for a different day. If we ever face the Packers, which I think would be the playoffs, but I don't know if I had the Packers making the playoffs. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
But Douglas has big games too. Like he's had some games and he's had some big moments in games. So like he's not like a completely non-existent piece, but he is definitely not, a number 1 or number 2 cornerback. Because he'd be number 2 there behind Jair Alexander. Yeah. So he's not number 2 cornerback material.
And then Anthony, as we're getting close to, we're going to do our players to watch and then our keys to the game of prediction. The Commanders will keep the game closer than people think. I actually agree with you. Again, I said it on the outset. It's a division game. It's going to be a lot closer. While the Eagles won, they win by 14. Last week's game wasn't as close as the score was, I think, as the score indicated. I do think that this week is going to be a lot closer. So you're talking. Okay, so Burgundy, you're talking from a Commander's point of view, worried about Kelce? Is what I'm assuming, as you saying.
Yeah, I would assume he's worried about Kelce, the matchup that Kelce presents. And I mean, Cam Jurgens is starting to look better. Landon Dickerson, he's hobbled in a couple games this season, but I mean, they're starting to look better. His concern is he looks off. I wonder if his heart is in it. He seemed to want to retire.
He looks off. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. No. He doesn't look off. Trying to figure out a way to put this.
The interior of the offensive line has not looked great.
It has not looked
to
good.
Start.
Yeah, that has not looked good.
They haven't gelled the same, and I think that could possibly be pointed back. And Burgundy and Go for life. This Cam looks like the weakest link on that line.
He's the newest week, or he's the
newest. So like you have to gel, like because last year Dickerson, Seumalo, and Kelsey looked unstoppable. They were so good at the interior of that offensive line. They did such a good job. And Cam Jurgens, what we're asking him to do at right guard is he is a natural born center. He plays the center position. He is supposed to be the Kelsey, the heir to the Kelsey throne at the center position. So, of course, he's making an adjustment similar to a la Emmanuel Forbes in the scheme that he's playing. So this guy's playing a different position, while the interior offensive line, right guard, left guard, center, they can be very interchangeable. In my opinion, if you're naturally stronger at a specific position, then
I also think Cam, he struggled week 1, but he's looked really good the last 2 weeks. Like
the interior of the offensive line is definitely getting better and getting more comfortable.
They've averaged over 220 the last 2 weeks, over 220 yards rushing a game.
I mean, look at last week. The majority of those holes were not opened up by the tackles. They were opened up by the center and the guards for DeAndre Swift.
You could drive a Mack truck. You could drive a Mack truck through the holes that they were opening up against Tampa and the Vikings the last 2 weeks.
I like Jurgens at guard, but we cannot continue to draft the heir apparent to Kelsey and put him at guard. We did it with Dickerson. Jurgens needs to be able to kick back left and become the center at some point, I hope, because then we're just going to continue to invest high draft picks on interior offensive linemen, and I do not want to continue to see that year in and year out. So eventually, I mean, theoretically, this draft would be the one where you get the heir apparent if Jurgens is going to stick at right guard, because now you have to attack the center position.
I do think Tyler Steen, though, like say Kelsey does retire after this year, you move Jurgens to center. Tyler Steen could play right guard. Like, so they do. I think they do have the guard in house. And he's getting a chance to learn at Stoutland U. And when given the chance, I think he'll be fine. I had it right last week. Yai Chol. I hope I got it right.
You got it. I know you got it.
Cam's playing better than you're giving him credit for. He's still getting used to playing next to Landon Kelsey, and I think he's playing well, and he's definitely been better the last 2 weeks. Anthony says, if you look how many times Hurts has time to throw, a lot of times. If you look how many times Hurts has had time to throw, it's a lot of time for a quarterback in the pocket. Again, the touchdown pass to Zacchaeus last week, he had 5.6 seconds before he almost got it. And then, like, when he threw it, it wasn't even a great throw either. It was a duck. I thought it was going to be picked and right in the Zacchaeus' hand. So, the offensive line deserves a lot of credit for how they've protected him. And again, a lot of I think Hurts was only sacked once last week, but a lot of time he's holding on to the ball. His 2 interceptions last week, one was a miscommunication with Swift. The other one, I think he threw it a little late. I think he threw it a little late, and the safety just made a good play. So we'll see what happens offensively.
I do agree that this will be a real test for Cam Jurgens to be able to go up against this interior of the defensive line. We don't deny that, Burgundy Gopher. Like, we do not deny that this is going to be a true test to see, I don't think I agree with you, LJ. I don't think that Kelsey looks that much different or any different really at all. He's still the middle of that offensive line. He's the leader of that offense. He's a general leader of the entire team. But I don't think he's played that much dramatically different or worse. But it will be interesting to see what Cam Jurgens can do this week when he gets a true, really tough interior defensive line matchup. And that's why on both sides of the ball, I'm excited to see the line matchups, offense versus defensive line.
You think about it, he's got Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen this week, Aaron Donald next week, Quinnen Williams the week after. So it's going to be a test. He's about to get tested. They see Eagles offensive line is about to get tested. All right, so let's move to who's your offensive and defensive players of the game to watch. And then we will get to predictions.
Offense, I'm going to go with Devontae Smith for all the reasons we talked about earlier. I mean, he's going to have the matchup where he can really continue to stand out and play a big role. I hope it isn't. If it's an A.J. Brown game and it's a successful A.J. Brown game, awesome. If it's an A.J. Brown game to try and force the game, force the ball to AJ Brown, that would be frustrating. So hopefully they take advantage of the matchup because Devontae Smith is such a good route runner. He does such a good job getting himself open and what he can do in space. I think he can make it a really, really tough night for Emmanuel Forbes. So Devontae Smith for me. On the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to go and give it to Hassan Reddick for this one. And Chol just did it too. Hassan is about to go off. So I agree. I think this is a game. He's talked it up. He says he can feel comfortable. He says that he's going to give it his all. He can give it his all. He can pin his ears back and go. I think this is a game we see Hassan Reddick's at a minimum first sack of the season. And hopefully a lot more. He's been non-existent almost in tackles and sacks and pressures. So I really want to see all of it. I want to see it all come together. Pressures, tackles, sacks. Maybe not tackles because, he's not always called upon to make tackles like that, but at least the pressures and the sacks got to start rolling in this week. So me and Yachol are on the same page. And it looks like me and Michael are too because he says Devontae 100 plus 2 TDs. I love it. And Michael, I think I've picked Josh Sweat at least once, maybe twice this year, but 2 sacks for Sweat would be really nice too.
So defensively, I'm going to go with Darius Slay. He hasn't had the greatest, matchup with Terry McLaurin. McLaurin does well against the Eagles for some reason, and he's just a really good receiver. And I know he hasn't really gone off in the Bieniemy offense yet. But I need Darius Slay to have a big game, maybe get a pick. And if the front four for the Eagles can get after, Sam Howell, force him to throw the ball earlier than he would like, maybe he'll throw the ball to Slay or even Bradbury for that matter. But I'm going to go Darius Slay on defense. On offense, I'm going to go a little different. I'm going Brian Johnson. This needs to be a Brian Johnson game. He has improved every week. But I need Brian Johnson to put Jalen Hurts in position to succeed. Hurts has way too many turnovers through the first 3 games of the year, and I know it's only 3 interceptions and a fumble. I know it's only 4 turnovers, but that's too many. Jalen Hurts didn't turn the ball over for I feel like the first 3 or 4 weeks last year. So I need Brian Johnson to put the offense, get the offensive passing game going, and if he can't, go to the bread and butter. Run the football. You can run the football on this Washington team, and we know the Eagles' offensive line loves running the football, and DeAndre Swift has been a monster the last 2 weeks. So I'm going to go with Darius Slay on defense, and I'm going to go Brian Johnson, the Eagles' offensive coordinator, on offense.
I love it. I like the Brian Johnson call because it definitely has to happen. Burgundy and Gold for Life is saying all those predictions are possible because, as Michael also said, 100 yards rushing again for Swift. Michael, we talked about the fact that, the Commanders are giving up 128 rushing yards per game. So it's very likely DeAndre Swift can have himself a game. So that's not outside the realm of possibility. Anthony said his offensive player to watch is Swift. Defensive, he agreed with you. He went with Slay. It would be nice to see. It would be nice. Like, we've seen a lot of fumbles, like a lot of fumble recoveries and balls hitting the ground in our favor. It would be nice to see some plays made through the air and see some interceptions and winning the turnover battle in that way versus the way we've kind of been winning it so far this year. I did want to look at average time to throw because I thought that was interesting. Average time to throw for Jalen Hurts is 3.14 seconds. Or average time to throw for, Jalen Hurts is 2.8 seconds. Average time to throw for Sam Howell, 2.65. Average time to a sack is 4.45 for Jalen Hurts. For Sam Howell, it is 3.65.
Wow.
And then the average time to a scramble is 5.75 for Jalen Hurts and 5.5 for Sam Howell. So, first of all, Jalen Hurts, that 5.75 speaks to the fact that they don't want him scrambling as much. The fact that the average time to scramble is that long, which, let me look, it might be tops in the NFL. Okay, it's not tops in the NFL. It's 5th highest. Baker Mayfield, Joe Burrow, Jordan Love, and Justin Fields are ahead of him in that category. But that kind of speaks to the fact that it feels like they don't want him scrambling and running as much, and he's taking his time and thinking. But also, that average time to sack just tells you that Yeah, if he's not getting the ball, if Sam Howell's not getting the ball out, he's pretty much getting sacked. So
Yeah.
it could be. I
Again,
don't
they've
know what
given
it
up
was, but
19
somebody
sacks.
says it could be a sack party. So whoever said that, I agree. Oh, it's Yai Chol. The QB holds onto the ball for too long, might be a sack party. You might be right.
Yeah, and again, how might hold on to the ball longer than Carson Wentz did last year. And Carson Wentz held on to the ball a lot in that 9-sack game. Held on to the ball a long time in that 9-sack game the Eagles had. We'll see. We'll see about that. I mean, I don't know if the Eagles will have 9 sacks, but I think they at least get to 5 on Sam Howell. All right, prediction
I
time.
agree, Chol. I think we want this to be a game where we see Penny touches.
All right, Penny should have got touches last week. He could potentially get touches this week. All right, so prediction time. We're both 3-0 on Eagles predictions. I said 21-17. You said 24-20 last week. So we were both there. Versus the Commanders, I have my score written down. Now you give your prediction, and I'll tell you what I have written down.
It's so crazy because going through all the prediction, like all these, impact players and seeing all the comments over there, you would like to believe that this is going to be like a blowout game for the Eagles, but the divisional aspect just doesn't have me there. Like I cannot willingly go and give like a 2-score difference in the final score in a divisional matchup.
Is it still 8.5 points the spread? I think that's crazy.
That's huge for a divisional matchup. I'm just going to click in here and take a look.
Like what the Bills did last week to them, and a lot of people have the Eagles on par, if not better than the Bills. Like obviously, you can never play that game, but I think that's kind of where
it's up to the line's up to 9 now.
Seriously,
9.
Is somebody
so that's
out
a
for
massive
Washington
line.
that we don't know?
I don't. Maybe Burgundy and Gold for Life can tell us if something happened, but I mean, the out players is just Chris Rodriguez, who was like their 3rd string, 4th string running back. So it's not like they're missing anywhere near as vital of bodies as us, which is really just Quez Watkins and Sidney Brown. But I don't know. I agree with you. That line seems massive. I don't think I can give it that high. I'm going the Philadelphia Eagles are. Philadelphia Eagles 30 and the Washington Commanders, I'm going 22.
30-22 Eagles?
I'm just going to be on the fringe of a 2-score game because I can't give a 2-score victory to a divisional matchup.
I do think it's going to be a close game. Like, Eagles fans will be complaining the first half, in the third quarter, into the fourth quarter, and I think it'll be a 1-score game most of the time. I have the Eagles winning 24-14. They'll score a late touchdown or a field goal or whatever to get the up to the 10-point advantage. But I find it hard that Sam Howell is going to be able to move the ball on the Eagles. And I don't know if the offensive line is going to be able to block the Eagles front four. If they do, kudos to them. I just don't think the Eagles can allow Sam Howell to beat them. And I don't think that they will allow Sam Howell. And again, it's the revenge factor. First loss of the year for the Eagles last year was the first loss of the year was to Washington last year when the Eagles had less than 20 minutes of time of possession. And after that game, Howie went out and got Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh and tried to shore up the run defense. And that BS roughing the passer they called on Brandon Graham. I don't think that'll happen. Besides the Eagles winning 24-14, you have the Eagles winning 30-22.
Awesome. And I'll take a minute here. Michael thinks 33-16 for the Eagles. Anthony thinks 28-7 for the Eagles. Burgundy and Gold for Life says, wow, our number 3 safety is out. Most feel that our team won't be able to move the ball. I mean, in our defense, have they proven capable of moving the ball? Like maybe we're missing out. Chol goes 42-7, I'm guessing, for the Eagles. And he also says, thank you for the show, gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. We do this for all of you guys. So thank you for joining us and enjoy the rest of your weekend as well. Yeah.
And I don't anticipate the Commanders being able to run. I mean, nobody's been able to run the football in the Eagles this year. That was with Jordan Davis being who he is and Jalen Carter. Like it's tough to run on the Eagles right now. And that's why it's going to be important for the Eagles to get pressure on Sam Howell so that Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Logan Thomas, if he's healthy, and Curtis Samuel and even Brian Robinson out the backfield, they're not able to beat them down the field. Yeah, Derek Burnett's unfortunately still on the team. That's an unfortunate.
But he's not seeing the field all that much, and he should see even less and more go to Nolan Smith.
More than Nolan Smith right now, and I don't like that.
Yeah, we are still very, very proudly and happily screaming Nolan Smith's name from the mountaintops because we really want to see this guy more. And that play that he made against Baker, where he absolutely clobbered him, like that alone should warrant at least a couple more snaps per game.
All right. So thank you all. Thank you guys for the comments. We really, really appreciate all the interaction throughout the show. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10 and follow me on Twitter at LJHarrell54 and follow Edge of Philly Sports on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at Edge of Philly Sports. We will be back on Tuesday with a recap of the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders game. As always, thank you all for tuning in to the Kelly Green Hour.
Fly, Eagles, fly.